Shri Sai Ram. Pranams to Swami. And dear brothers and sisters, thank you for coming back once again. I promise you this is going to be a very serious and boring talk, but I have to blame the organizers of the Silent Retreat because I'm charged with the responsibility of sharing some of my thoughts and experiences on a serious topic, and I don't have a choice. But before we delve into that supposedly serious discussion, a lot of things come to mind as from the interactions I had with Swami, and especially when I bow down to the chair and, because the robe is here. How many of you have heard of or read the book, The Robe? It's a real big classic, but of yesteryear. So when I bow to the robe always has such a great symbolism, and it reminds you of the master whom you love. It just doesn't remind you of a master. It brings back memories because it is a garment, or in terms of Christianity, it was the shroud. And Swami himself was very kind. Just like Shirdi Baba used to mix up the herbs and give it to people because they couldn't have accepted a cure by the wave of his hands. So the masters have always worked through some I hope that's not me. So that medium, it's not a good word, but often helps us recollect and tune into Swami. And Swami used to oftentimes give us a robe, as a symbol that would help us remember him. And there are many stories about how Swami kind of cautioned us to prepare to remember him. But more of that later. But as I bow down to the form of Swami here, many mischievous memories, come back. I'll tell you a couple of them before we get very serious. One thing that used to happen is, as a college student, I had a habit of preparing my speech, but then summarizing it, because Swami would just not like it if you carried a bunch of papers and put it on the podium, and you won't get called back to speak again. And but that was only for the boys. A lot of devotees and elderly people who spoke were allowed to, but as they came closer to the fire, their paper had to be left out. And then, but I would still carry a few points, just summary of my speech in case I forgot. What are you going to do there? Between 5 and 20,000 people, and you got to save your skin. And one day I remember in particular, as I bowed to Swami, what had happened is I had been trying to give him a letter for many days. This was an important decision for me. I was at the cusp of an important decision as to whether I should do my master's in chemistry, organic chemistry, or continue in environmental biology. And he wouldn't take that letter. And I gave up trying to hold that letter. And but then I was called upon to make this speech. And as I bowed to him, he put his hand into my pocket and took out my letter and put it on his, where the letters were kept on the side, or where his tumbler of water was kept. And my mind was screaming, Swami, that is not my letter. that I've been trying to give you for so many days. That is my speech. And then things could get worse. That was a relatively soft and nice incident. One day when he was in a particularly naughty mood, this was in Brindavan, I was asked to speak during the summer course in 1993, and I made this a kind of a group of words that are related, just like Swami says, 5 Ds or 4 Fs, right? So I made this up just while I was sitting there in the auditorium. It flashed to me, and I said something about character, conviction, confidence, and so on. And after my talk, Swami clapped, because I said that this is chip off the old block, just like Swami makes up these frameworks that help us, right? For instance, the 4 Fs, follow the master, face the devil, such a nice framework that puts everything in perspective. And Swami liked that idea and then clapped. And then when it was my turn to bow down at his feet after I spoke, what he very quickly did was my hands were on his feet, but very quickly he put both his feet above my hands and he locked my hands down there. And try as I may, I was actually doing this, and I didn't want to just yank my hands free. For all you know, there is some spiritual symbolism about doing that. But while I was enjoying it, I knew this was not going to be good for me, because there were a lot of senior students, a lot of professors, and they would say, "What are you trying to do? This is indiscipline. You're not getting up from Swami's, from the namaskar." And Swami, much to my dismay, was looking at the boys and the rest of the audience in the auditorium as if wondering why this boy is being so impertinent and not getting up. And at the end, he, mischievously looked at me. Only I caught the smile, and it was at least 7 or 8 seconds before he let me go. And these are such sweet memories, because there is nothing about it that we deserved, right? There is nothing that you can lay claim to such a sweet, motherly, friendly action on, from Swami, who is so revered, so great. I mean, what would any of us do to get even a shadow of that experience back in our lives? And to think that he blessed the students and a large number of devotees to have these wonderful encounters. He gave of himself so freely and so lovingly. It was never about, in 2005, many years later, I left the ashram. And just think for a moment, just like Christ knew how each of his disciples would be crucified decades later. Swami, when he met us the first time, and even before that, when he called us, when he chose us all to be with him, he obviously knew that this guy is going to leave me at this point of time. But that leaving and coming and going matters to us a lot. And I have never been able to get over that. Even in the dreams that I have had about Swami, this has been a major issue for me to grapple with. And it took me 10 years after I left Swami. And this is both happening to me and being done by me. And it's after, about 15 dreams and 10 years later, now when I dream of Swami, I'm again in his inner circle. But for 10 years I dreamt being away from Swami. Still communicate, guide, tell me a lot of things, but visually in the dream I was in the outer circle. And I'm just saying this because look at the grace of Swami. Look at the love of Swami when he held my hands under his feet. He was so much in the moment, giving joy, not worried about, is this investment going to pay off or not? That's not how Swami looked at his interaction with us. I'm investing so much time in these devotees and students. Are they going to give their lives up for me? No, that's not how he thought. And as we try to think of who he is, this is one of the aspects of his personality, that if there is such a thing as his personality, but when he took that human form, this was such a sweet and beautiful way in which he communicated with us. Okay, now into the serious topic. So I just need to go back to that for a second, if you don't mind. So when you say that, when I ventured to say over there in smaller print that we are on the threshold of self-discovery, I want to hear from you, what does a threshold imply? You all know what a threshold is. It's out of vogue nowadays. You know, you don't see thresholds. But what does a threshold imply? Sorry? Okay. More thoughts? Okay. A gate? Okay. I'm only referring to the word threshold. What does... Okay. Wonderful. The upper limit? Okay. Please. Yes. I think assimilating all these answers, they kind of connect with what I was thinking. So threshold implies the need to separate two rooms, right? You got to step over the threshold to come into the next room. And therefore it means that there are 3 stages. And whenever Swami spoke about, Swami was always talking about 3 things. Whatever it is in spirituality, it is 3. Even the discussion we had about SAI was 3. Service, adoration, illumination. The 3 gunas. And to me, the fact that there is a threshold means that there is a region before the threshold, and then there is a threshold, and then there is the next room or the next level, as somebody said. What other such trios come to mind? Excellent. What else? That's the epitome, yes. But there are many other. Very nice. See, that is something, if you Google it, you will not find it anywhere. Only Swami has said this. Beautiful. And what is the corresponding one that Swami said oftentimes about Jesus Christ, especially during Christmas? Yes. Some more from the women's side. Wonderful. What else? Yes. Sorry? Okay. What are the well-known sets of 3? Yes. That I already said. How about, yes? Perfect. That's one that is very relevant to this theme. Yes. And yes? Yes. Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So these three are very important, right? And the other one that is relevant here is consciousness, conscience, and conscious. And these are very difficult to understand, but all the sets of three that we spoke about are in some way or the other related to the others. For instance, concentration, contemplation, meditation is intimately related with the concept of conscious, conscience, and consciousness. So the word threshold implies that there are three. And like brother said, in this great philosophy of Vishishtadvait, which holds that you are separate from God, but you can become God. Whereas the Dvaita philosophy says that you and God will always remain separate. And it's not like they don't understand that you can merge with God, but they want to keep being separate from God because they feel that that's the only way to enjoy the love of God. So moving on, I just recapped some of the stuff that we spoke about over the course from yesterday evening. We spoke about satsang. We spoke about this spiritual hunger which Swami has written about. And he's brought it out as a concept that is now, with us. And believe me, some of these concepts are very important to us. I mean, if you did not know the concept of anugraha or grace, if you did not know the concept of bhakti, I think I personally would be very impoverished. I'm much richer after having learned some of these concepts. So, this whole concept of spiritual hunger that Swami has brought out in that letter is very powerful. And then we spoke about the first meeting with the Master. There are many people who told me that this reminded them of their first meeting and we should hark back to those days and replay them. And then we spoke about the characteristics of the Sadguru, who is powerful yet compassionate. How he is in fact the greatest yogi. He is beyond the roles that he plays. And most importantly, he is always sincere. He is never not working for you. He is always working for you. That sincerity is the one that I like most. And then like Raja Reddy said, instead of analyzing him and enjoying ourselves, let's analyze ourselves and enjoy him. Because you can do nothing more than enjoying him. You cannot fathom what he did, why he did, who he is, where he is. And then we challenged ourselves to think a little bit about what is spiritual practice. Is it 3 paths? Is it this? Is it that? Do we know what we are going to do? And I shared with you my idea that we are actually beyond spiritual hunger and meeting the Master. Everything else is well known to him, but pretty much unknown to us. So, letting him do his work on us is important because he knows what we are, he knows what we need, and he knows the goal. We don't know the goal. So you can look at a person who's completed his PhD and say, yeah, I want to be like this PhD. Or you can look at a cardiac surgeon and go and visit him in his operation theater and say, yeah, this is a cardiac surgeon and this is what I want to become. But you cannot do that in spirituality. You cannot understand who Swami was. We cannot connect with Swami's state of mind and say, I want to be in that state of mind. And then we said, on point 8, let Bhagwan do his work. And what do you think fills in that, the rest of that phrase? Why do we say let Bhagwan do his work? Because, what do you think? Thoughts? He knows better. He knows best. He knows what he's doing. Simple as that. So all that we've learned about the major epic events that he did, the dead whom he revived, the miracles that we've seen him perform in other people's lives and in our own lives, have that single purpose. So that we can come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm in good hands. And I don't know this path. I've heard this from them. I've heard this from them. I don't know whether this applies to me. Yes, I read a lot of these books of Sri Raman Maharishi or Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj or whoever. But I don't know whether this is really good for me, whether this applies to me. It seems very interesting. It seems very exciting, but it doesn't get me anywhere. That was my own experience. And then I used to come back to Swami and say, yes, Swami, it's all wonderful books, but now you tell me what to do. Because after all, I want to move on. I don't just want to become a pseudo-intellectual and say, yeah, I can mouth all these great phrases. So we want Bhagwan, we have to let Bhagwan do his work. And that is surrender. Surrender to him is saying, Swami, you know much better than me. You know the best for me. And I know it's tough sometimes, but give me the energy, the Shakti to follow you. And then we stopped with the concept of what Sri Shankaracharya taught, which is Bhaja Govindam. And the point we left off at was that death is certain. Death is not imminent probably, but death is certain. And it's very remarkable that on I don't know how many hundreds of occasions I've heard Swami talk about death to us. And we were never depressed by it. We were never upset by it. And he used to go to the extent of saying, you don't know when death will arrive and where it will arrive. And there's some famous Telugu stanzas which we'll not go into. So we stopped at this and we said that it is objective knowledge that Shankara is referring to, right? And that knowledge that is outside of you, which you will forever need to know, science, the science of spirituality, the Vedas, all of this is objective knowledge and it is external to you. And then you have, on the other hand, you can see how Swami, who knew everything about spirituality, was love in action. And again, there are these three beautiful sayings of Swami. Anybody, anything comes to mind on the saying on the right? Some new voices. Fantastic. Wonderful. And it took me a long time to understand what is the meaning even. The first two are relatively easy to understand, but love without duty. And I think the reason it was tough to understand is that there are very few examples. So the mind tends to think in terms of examples, correct? And what are the other examples that come to your mind about love in the absence of duty? And that is what Swami is actually challenging us to do more and more. And Sai devotees are doing that all the time. You're trying to love, go to the homeless shelters. I don't know whether you know that about 150 Sevadal members come to the Satya Sai hospital every week from different parts of India. And Swami had given me a little recorder, so I would go and conduct patient interviews after the patients were operated, And it was a fascinating learning for me, because often you tend to look at a patient as a number, sometimes as a name, but definitely as a number, medical record number. And it was these interviews that gave me insight into how they were looking at this hospital stay. And when Swami would visit the hospital, they were non-devotees. They had never seen Swami. But I heard from a number of these patients and their families that it was not so much the surgical staff and the nurses who impressed them, but that the Sevadals really won their hearts. And when I used to ask the patients and family for examples, why do you say that the Sevadal are doing a phenomenal job? 150 Sevadal members, such a large hospital. And they would tell me fantastic stories. And they would say, I was in 2 other hospitals before I came to the Satya Sai hospital. And never was I asked by anybody in the hospital staff to try and eat a little bit more so that my health will improve. And over here, the dietary staff do that and say, don't waste food, please eat more, you will put on weight, you need the nutrition. But then it's the Sevadal who come and sit with us and say, try to eat some more of these beans, there's protein in it, and you need the protein. And said, the patients used to say, we are thrilled by this. These people who wear this blue scarf, they are gone before you know it. In 1 week, they are gone. But they treat every patient with so much love. They walk around tirelessly. And to me, that was a real eye-opener. That it's okay that we who have got so much from Bhagwan, like I said, near and dear, we got so much opportunity to understand Bhagwan. He was in our lives. He gave us vibhuti every time we or our relatives were sick. But these Sevadals were coming from afar. They had no contact with Swami. Many of them had never seen Swami too much. But they were doing such a phenomenal job of communicating love even when there was no duty there. They were completely volunteering. So to me, these hospitals and Swami's effort in establishing the hospital has always remained a marvelous example of both the power and the compassion of Swami. And I don't know how many of you know that when Swami explained to us why he wanted to set up the hospital, he said he had read a little article about a mother who could not afford to feed her children. And she took her own life and the life of her children. And Swami said 2 things. He said, this sort of news should be on the front page, but this is on the last page. Such a small little write-up. And Swami, when he spoke about this in his discourse, he broke down. And the rest is history. When in 1990, Swami announced this hospital, everybody was very skeptical. And those of you who've been to Puttaparthi, you know the condition in Puttaparthi. And in those days, it was terrible. In fact, I had this opportunity to serve at the hospital for 14 years. And I know that even a decade after the hospital had been established, the types of challenges that this hospital has had to face, absolutely impossible for anybody to have thought of doing this and then to see it through. And then after 10 years, Swami started another hospital in Vrindavan. And I have a beautiful picture of Swami in Kodaikanal. So on 1st May 1990, we were with Swami in Kodaikanal. And there's this picture, I'll try to show it to you tomorrow. Swami has the architectural plans of the hospital open wide on his lap. And on 5th May, we returned from Kodaikanal and we made a trip to Parthi. And we said, oh, Swami was seeing those architectural plans in Kodaikanal. And when we drove through Puttaparthi, there was nothing. There was the fence around these 150 acres where Swami has built the hospital. And this was May 5th. And on November 22nd, I was in the operating theater and we performed 4 highly complex cardiac surgeries. It really stands out as a miracle of Swami's power. 2 days before the hospital was inaugurated, Dr. Safaya, he's no more and he's very venerated, wonderful instrument of Swami. He told his wife, I think we should go back to New Delhi. He was from New Delhi. I don't think this hospital is going to happen. And I don't want to be the cause of the failure. 2 days before, and Auntie, Miss Safaya told me this herself. So as we stand here and think that it was all, happened in a flash, the money came, the doctors came, it was not like that. All of us continued to doubt. On November 4th, we came back from Delhi and Swami asked us to go visit the hospital. And of course the hospital was there, but there were 5 levels of work going on in the hospital. Trenches were being dug. In some parts of the hospital, the foundation had not been laid. And we could not go up to the operation theater on November 5th. There was a crane unloading the cath lab directly because it's such a massive machine. They were pushing it through an opening in the wall. And they said, if you guys want to go to the operating theater today, you have to climb up a ladder from outside the building on November 5th. And a week before the operations, I was in the operating theater. We fumigated, we sterilized the theaters. And without any hitch, on November 22nd, 4 cardiac surgeries were done. In contrast, Escorts Hospital, one of the very big and well-known hospitals in New Delhi, opened about a year and a half later. And for 1 month, they did 1 cardiac surgery a day in the heart of New Delhi. And we in Puttaparthi did 4 cardiac surgeries on the first day. So when we talk about the miracles of Swami and the power of Swami, it is phenomenal. We cannot comprehend it. Even though I was there in person, I cannot comprehend how this happened. And all the things that I told you are facts, which just don't add up. But at the end of the day, Swami is not only about achievement. Yes, for those who love him, we love to hear these stories because they are so heartwarming. They give us such a sense of completion about our Guru. That our Guru is not just a spiritual master who talks about Atma and sadhana. He is a man of action. Without funds, without asking for funds from anybody, he built this hospital. And the critics will always be the critics. Where is a paucity of critics in this world? But this work that he has done is truly awesome, truly mind-blowing, out of the world. And the way he achieved it is equally awesome. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's less an example of achievement. For Swami, it was only about giving his love to people, to more people. And that is why love without duty is divine. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how this rubbed off on me. About 10 years later, I was working in the hospital for those 14 years. About 10 years after that, my joining the hospital, we were the first employees We had a lot of privileges. Swami used to come every day and ask us how many surgeries were done. Every time there was some material sent from the US, Swami would call us, take those bags, talk to us. We were instrumental in helping many of the physicians and surgeons from the US to come to Swami. We would drive them to the portico. Swami would often call us in for an interview along with these great doctors who were so committed, like Dr. Voleti Chowdhury, Dr. Jivanandam, many others as well. And then about 10 years later, this incident happened, which some of you may be knowing of, and I just wanted to share it because it's very, very humbling, and it shows the power of prayer once again. So I was in the operating theater. We have a lot of pictures of Swami around the hospital, and by the way, at least until the time I was there, each one of those pictures had been sent by Swami himself. So that has added charisma, right? And in fact, the pictures in our operating theater had not only been seen and sent by Swami, they had been hand-delivered by Swami himself to the operating theater. He had brought them in his own car and had Radhakrishna deliver them to us and put them here, put this here. And then on numerous occasions he visited the hospital. When there were patients who were known to Swami, he would come. And there was also one very beautiful incident that happened, that one day he came. I used to leave the mandir after darshan and rush to the hospital, grab breakfast and then go into the operating room. And one day, all of a sudden, at about 7:45, we heard that Swami has landed up in the hospital. And instinctively, we tend to think that's the very negative human way of thinking. And my first thought was that, who is it that Swami has come to see? There is nobody known to Swami right now in the hospital, no old devotee or no VIP in the hospital. But I didn't have time to think. I was in my green dress, and before I knew it, Swami was at the door. Very few of our other students were there, and Swami was that day walking with a purpose. He was not looking here and there, talking to all patients, blessing the staff. It seemed like he came with a purpose. And we have these large glass double doors, so I was opening them for Swami, and we would put off the air curtains because otherwise Swami's hair would get compressed. And that was one opportunity to, Swami would always acknowledge when we ran and put off the switch so that the air curtain stopped. Swami would acknowledge that. And Swami walked and walked. He went through the ICU, but he wouldn't stop. Then he went into the step-down ICU. And all of a sudden, he turned around. I was just behind Swami. And he raised his hand like this. He looked at a particular patient. And he just blessed her. But the look in Swami's face was amazing. So merciful, so kind. And he did this. And he blessed her. And from her reaction, I could make out that she's not into Swami. And then Swami left after that. And these are the moments when you realize that you don't know who Sai Baba is. All the slots, all the stereotyping that you have done for everybody else and try to do it for Swami doesn't work. And then as soon as Swami left, I said, I decided to get to the bottom of this. Because this was funny. Swami just came from a distance, he gave her a Abhayasta and he went off. Then I found out more about the patient. It was a lady patient, very poor, extremely poor, from about 4 or 5 villages away. She had a mitral valve problem. She was about 32, 33. And she was pregnant, she was carrying. And that night when they rushed her to the hospital because she was in she was in a bad situation, she was not able to breathe because of a mitral valve. And then they called the gynecologist from the general hospital, but they were not able to save the baby. And this mother's pain due to her own disease and due to the fact that her baby hadn't survived after so many months, she had probably called out to Swami. And even now, as I look back and recollect Swami's looks and the way he gave her that Abhayasta, it's so heartwarming. Because that is Swami. He did not come as we sometimes think for him or for her. All our stereotypes really fail here. Would he give more attention to the students or more attention to the well-known devotees or more attention to the Westerners than the Indians? All these stereotypes really fail in the face of this experience. It is not sensational. It doesn't have a big miracle at the end of the narration. But it is very heartwarming. And this has always remained with me, that Swami would do this, is responding to a call. And look at the pain in the life of that woman. Who knows it? Who cares for it? And she's too weak and too poor to ever be heard. But there is somebody. He set up the hospital when he read that story. He came to give this lady his blessing. And so this drove me on another occasion to try to apply all this love to patients. And there was an aortic valve replacement patient who was 68 years old, and I was running the heart-lung machine for this patient. And the patient was obviously not going to make it because there's a process of weaning the patient of the heart-lung machine. So the heart is stopped, all the blood is taken into the heart-lung machine, and then you oxygenate it, give it back to the patient, and the surgeon has a bloodless field while he can work on the heart. And aortic valve surgery is a pretty risky surgery. And this patient we were not able to wean him off the heart-lung machine. And I had been in the operating theater from 8 a.m. in the morning, and it was now 5 p.m. I hadn't been able to step out for lunch because my colleague was on another surgery. And at 5 p.m., my colleague Shankar got free, and he came over to this operating room and he said, "Ravi, you haven't eaten, go get some lunch." And I said, "I'll go." And then I just peeped over the curtain and I saw that this heart was just fibrillating. That means not able to contract. And we had tried by then everything, drugs, inotropes, dopamine, adrenaline, and the surgeon had called the cardiologist, and we were all thinking what can be done. Meanwhile, we were supporting the heart by keeping the heart-lung machine on. So that's called resting the heart. And then I just came out, I went to the restroom, and before I sat at lunch, a thought just passed my mind. Why not I pray to Swami for this patient? Now imagine you work in Swami's own hospital. It's a marvelous hospital. It has Swami's pictures all around. Swami's visited the hospital numerous times. But from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you never thought of praying for this patient. And at 5 p.m., all of a sudden, you now think. And this is what happens to all of us. So at that point, I just went into one of the support area rooms. And I just said a prayer for about 2-3 minutes. I just prayed to Swami. Swami, you know everything. I don't even know the face of this patient. But I'm calling on you. Swami, help this patient. I just said the name of the patient and why the patient was there. And I kept repeating that. I said, Swami, please help so-and-so. Please help so-and-so. Please help so-and-so. And Swami must have got tired hearing the repetition. And that's probably the way to get through to him. Okay, not so many times, I'll do it. And then I went for lunch and I was in a hurry. I wanted to get back. You know, you have that kind of emotional feeling for the work that you're doing. So I rushed back into the operating theater. And it was a completely different picture in the operating theater. People were laughing, chatting. My colleague Shankar was standing and moving around. I said, what's going on? And I looked at the monitor and there was a beautiful ECG and an arterial trace. And then I said, wow, maybe they put in a balloon or something. So I went and looked at from the head end, I looked at the heart. And the heart was going boom, 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 and everything was fine. And that's when I realized that completely this picture had changed and the patient was fine. Nobody was concerned anymore. And then we shifted the patient. I kept going to see the patient next day, third day, fourth day. Patient was fine, went home. And then on the next Sunday, I just went to the mandir, and I don't know how many of you know that location, but that was not in a path where Swami walks. It was off the path in the middle of the boys. And I was just sitting there. And I had also forgotten this incident. It was just about a week later. And Swami came up to me. He parted the boys. He came to me. And he materialized Vibhuti. And it's not common, once you've been there for many years, to have Swami materialize Vibhuti for you is not common. So I looked at him and he whispered, "Ye wo patient ke liye." This is for that patient. And I said, "Wow, Swami, thank you. Because if you had not given the Vibhuti and if you had not said those few words, we wouldn't have connected the dots to know that it was you. Of course it was you. But we would never have been sure." And that is somebody captured that, and that's such a beautiful memory, that he did the work of healing, but he is rewarding the messenger. So that was an example of selfless prayer, where I think that is something as a takeaway to all of us, right? When you see somebody in a homeless shelter or wherever you are going to do seva, and you tune into Swami and just pray to Swami and say, "Swami, I know this person is in this state for whatever reason, but I'm sending him your love. I'm sending him your vibrations. Cure him, heal him." And leave it at that. And this slide is a little different example, but I just wanted to share it. It's about what I feel is the way we should call on Swami. We all call on Swami, but I found through 2 or 3 different incidents that when you call on him intensely and you believe in your own call, then the response from him is very beautiful. So we were in Chennai with Swami in 1991, and when we came back, I was very upset because we were 54 boys, but we were not able to spend any time with Swami because we lived in a different location and Swami was in Sundaram, and we missed a lot of darshans. So somehow that got me very worked up. And in the bus journey back from Chennai to Vrindavan, I somehow felt very badly about it. I said, "Swami, what is the purpose of us being with you? And we've hardly seen you. We've hardly been able to enjoy your darshans or spend time. The whole world thinks that, oh, you traveled to Chennai with Swami and you had so many experiences. But we missed most of the darshans." And I remember in my own childish way, I was sitting in the bus on a seat which had 2 arms. And at one point I got a little irritated and frustrated and I started yanking on those arms and said, "Swami, this is not how it should be." And then when we landed at Vrindavan, Swami was waiting for us. These pictures are in Vrindavan, in Whitefield. And Swami was waiting for us and he said, "Come on, come for pictures." And so that is the first picture where I'm standing with Swami. And then what happened is there were 6 boys, 6 students with cameras. And I know this will sound like a fairy tale, but all 6 of their cameras, the batteries failed apparently. So Swami wanted, you can see that it's a little shaded spot, and Swami wanted the flash to be working. So many boys had been photographed standing alongside Swami. And then when it was my turn, 6 cameras flashes failed. And then what ensued thereafter was like a private interview. So I started to move away from Swami in respect, that I'm not supposed to be there as long as these guys figure out how to get the batteries for their flashes. So I started to draw away, and Swami held my hand and pulled me back and said, Undu, wait here. So then in the picture below you can see he's looking back and talking to me. So it was like another private interview. And I always related to the fact that at that point when I was traveling in the bus, that intensity, Swami, this is not right. I wish we had more time with you. And I think even today we can start applying that. Tell Swami, you left us. People say your mission is done, but I need you. I want you. And if you call on him with that intensity and believe in it, he will come to you in whatever way. So I just thought of sharing that. And then, so what is the impact of all these direct experiences that you have? Whether it is Swami, holding your hands under his feet or responding to a prayer for a patient. And this is what I've always felt, that Swami is actually stretching your mind. And once your mind is stretched by that new experience, it can never go back to its old dimensions. And that's a huge thing Swami has done to us. For you and me, acceptance of a lot of things is very different compared to a lot of other people. And that is happened because our minds have been stretched and cannot go back to that old dimension. So I put together a framework because Swami encouraged me to think like that. So I tried to capture some of what we've discussed. So process of major change begins. Spiritual hunger meets divine master. And that's also the time at which we start seeking to purify ourselves, because we clearly see that we lack in purity. We come to the master, we somehow happen to find him, but we lack in that purity. We use our senses in a different way. And when that grows to the next level, then we have a deep yearning for proximity. We don't know why. When I was in Bal Vikas, I didn't know why, but I wanted to become a SAI student. And you spend thousands of dollars and return to Puttaparthi every year or every 2 years. That deep yearning for proximity is a big milestone because it shows your growing commitment to the path. And then it is at that time that you start facing tests. Just like I got those tests, I was thrown out of the hostel before I joined it, and many other similar tests. And then that's when you realize that this is not an overnight escapade. It's not going to happen that you find your objective overnight. And you start realizing that you got to learn to wait. And all of us have learned that. Otherwise you won't be here. All of us have learned the value of patience and waiting. And eventually, the third stage in my mind is the surrender of the mature devotee who realizes that the spiritual path is not like a college course. I cannot chart this course out. I cannot, like Khalil Gibran says, direct the course of love. Swami may have listened to me at some point, but now and for the rest of my life, I have to listen to Swami. And we have to persevere until we get that grace. Because to break free from the limitations of the body and the mind is not going to happen by any amount of effort that we make. It's only going to happen by His grace. There are some animations in this, but just go further. Yeah, just keep moving. Sorry. So I also wanted to do a little bit justice to what I said in the beginning. Take you to a little bit serious and may be boring discussion, but of great value to me. So I had this chance to run the study circle in the SAI Center, and I was amazed to see that I had read all the other masters and what they said about the mind, but I hadn't still looked at all the literature that Swami has, that is available from Swami directly on the subject of the mind. And what started as a 2-week study circle went on for 9 weeks in our center, and a lot of people found great value in the focused discussion on the single topic, mind. And at the end, a number of senior devotees came and told me that, you know what, we never thought that there is such a fund of Swami's teachings just on the topic of the mind alone. So I have a set of slides. I'm more than happy to share it with all of you. I can mail it to you. I would invite you to use it for self-study, because each one of the statements that I've put there have an annotation, have a reference. I've checked these things out, and I got this from one of the devotees who has a database in Portland. I'd gone there for a retreat, and this gentleman shared the material with me, but it's fascinating. And I want to spend the next 10 minutes just talking about the mind. So I'll just pick and choose what we look at, but just to lay the context, right, there are these 4 parts or 4 components of the inner equipment. We all know our external equipment, right? What's our external equipment? My wife says all the C's: car, computer, cell phone. And then I added consort, not to leave her out. Children, big time. And then, closer to ourselves, we have the 5 senses. But Swami said there is another set of more important pieces of equipment which we oftentimes are unaware of. We don't even know which equipment we are using a lot of the time. And that is the antakarna. Anta means inside, and karna means tools of action. So I'll read out the middle paragraph. The mind is the thinking aspect of the Brahman. Thinking aspect of the Brahman. The absolute consciousness. The absolute self manifesting itself in imaginative activity is mind. However, instead of turning the mind towards the absolute, it turns outwards and starts using the senses as instruments. It forgets its source, the Atma, soul. How and why this happens is inexplicable. Look at Swami. How and why the mind has a constant outward drift is inexplicable. And I feel very good about it, because if Swami is saying it's inexplicable, maybe he just did it to us and we are not to so much blame for it. We know this happens, however, and it can be avoided and prevented. So when I thought about this, I looked a lot on the internet for a picture of how I interpreted this paragraph of Swami. And I tried to draw it up, but it was very unsuccessful. And this is the challenge, brothers and sisters, as we want to go subtle. There's plenty of stuff out there about the external world. But when you want to portray just what Swami has described there, that there seemed to be the soul somewhere deep within. And I think the soul is really the most neglected entity in our existence. For God's sake, whoever thinks about their soul? Even when I pray or do the Gayatri Jap or do bhajan, I don't remember a time when I've thought that I have a soul, and where is it and what is it? And that is the power of dwelling on these teachings. They turn you within, and that is what I feel is the purpose of our meeting, Swami. So there is the soul somewhere deep inside, and there is the mind as a middle layer, and then there are the senses. And it seems like the middle layer, the mind, is constantly in touch and working through the five senses. But there are times when we see Swami, when we have a deep experience, when we are dreaming of Swami, when we are in deep sleep, that this middle layer seems to turn the other way and shun the senses for a period of time, which causes huge inner bliss, and look at the Atma or the soul. And I think that is what Swami is trying to communicate there. That this is how creation has been kind of fixed to work. But it is possible, and it has happened in our lives, that when you turn the mind, and it's not such a difficult activity. It's not like going to the moon. You can do it. You have done it many times. It's only that you have to recognize that you have done it and figure out the parameters that can help you replicate it. And then going further, I've only put 3 slides. Bear with me. I have 7 or 8 slides on this, but I'm only going to talk about 3 slides. And I'll tell you how it really helped me in my own life and how Swami's grace came to me by doing this session. Now, this is a fascinating description in Sandeha Nivarani. Sandeha Nivarani means, Sandeha means doubt, and Nivarani means dispelling doubt. And Swami is the dispeller of doubt. It's a short book. In fact, it's available. If you just Google it, you can download it as a small PDF. It's fascinating the way he describes how this inner equipment actually operates. The mind grasps the object. The intellect examines arguments for and against. Chittam, the consciousness, understands the object by means of these two, the grasping of the object and the arguments for and against. The Chittam interprets that object on the basis of the inputs that are being provided to it by its 2 soldiers, the mind and the buddhi, the intellect. Ahamkaram, the ego sense, changes the decision for or against and by attachment. So the ego sense then, if it sees that the Chittam is not in favor of grasping that Mercedes Benz, says, hey, no, this is essential for my existence. Why? Because my neighbor has it. So the ego sense chimes in and shifts the balance towards worldliness, generally speaking. And then, what does that achieve? It slackens the hold of jnana. So all the knowledge that you have accumulated about God, the detachment that you've tried to cultivate, the ascetic life that you've tried to lead, you tried to follow Swami's dictum of sealing of desires, all of that, the Ahamkaram says, hey, not this time. Sealing of desires next time, not for this Mercedes Benz. And then, this is another, I will share the links with you. I was fascinated to find all this material. It's just a question of our looking. And imagine, I know that the subject of the mind is the most tantalizing subject. We would all love to know how to manage the mind. And it's all there in Swami's own literature. So this Westerner asks Swami, these thoughts that stream through the mind, are they material? Swami, yes, they are matter. And that just blew me off. Because with all the thoughts that we are thinking and they are all material, where are they? Oh my God. All matter is impermanent, though, he says. Devotee, where do thoughts come from? Swami, They come from food and environment. And this is easier to understand. If you have sattvic food and desire only for good things and atmosphere around you, good things and atmosphere around you, good thoughts only will come. We are all comfortable with this idea. But look at the next one. Where do thoughts go? They go no place, Swami says. Thoughts don't go anywhere. And here is a very, very important input Swami is provided. This type of insight, I don't believe you can get it anywhere. And I'm not trying to compare masters. Why on earth do we need to do that? Our job is to learn from this. But I haven't found something as mind-blowing as this explanation anywhere. They go no place. Where do thoughts go? They go no place. Because thoughts do not flow through the mind. The mind goes out and grasps and gets engaged with thoughts. If the desire is for God, the mind does not go out. The best way is not to get involved in the problem. How to get rid of thoughts. See all thoughts as God. Then only God thoughts will come. The entire mechanism of body, mind, intelligence will work in a coordinated manner for the benefit of the higher goal. I will share these links with you. There's another very powerful interview which I haven't even put here. Just give you a glimpse of that. And the people loved it. And then they invited me to do this as a workshop in the retreat as well. And I was really beholden to Swami that the devotees are genuinely interested in this. We had a classroom of this size. And before that workshop, I said, Swami, I don't think anybody is going to come. This is a boring topic. And you do what you want to do. And everybody was at lunch. And Dr. Goldstein was speaking in that retreat recently. I just prayed like that. And I've started to believe that this connection with Swami is very important. And you won't believe it, that there were 25 people standing in that workshop. It just goes to show how much interest there is in this topic. And every word on these slides is from Swami's own teachings. And this one, I will give you I just realized when I sent the slides that the reference has gone, but this is the best slide on the mind. No marketing, genuine. The mind is engaged in two activities. And this is Swami, vintage Swami. He's reduced all the complexity in Vedanta to this one page. And two words. All you got to remember today, and I'm going to ask you this in the morning as a test. Two words. Alochana or planning, and Sambhashana or dialogue. That's all. And I promise you, let's meet after a year. I will ask you how this helped you. It has helped me a lot. Just becoming aware even of the concept of the fact that the mind is actually operating in two main ways. By constantly acting as your planner. And the planner activity is acceptable. It's like an organizer in the earlier days, right? It's like your scheduler. It throws up an alarm 30 minutes before your next call. That's fine. But the next one is the really devastating activity of the mind. And that's what we all have to constantly work to manage. And that is Sambhashana or inner chatter or inner dialogue. And Swami says, and we all know, that 99% of that inner chatter is useless, not required, and it drains our energies. And while it starts as an advisory talk coming from somewhere, soon it overwhelms you. It prevents you from sleeping. And you will notice that this Sambhashana or inner dialogue is at its peak when you are undergoing a problem. Like if you have a promotion You're waiting for a promotion and you know that your boss is not looking favorably at you. All hell is going to break loose in your mind. Whatever is happening in the office may not be as bad as what is happening within you. And you are completely surrendered to the mind. You cannot even try to fix the problem. I don't even know whether a sleeping tablet would help. But it's a horrible volcanic activity that you cannot stem. And that is why it is not that we are only preparing to die remembering Swami. There are a lot of other gains on the way, such as being able to manage this inner dialogue that we really must be working on. Because we are at the mercy of the mind. And even if you cannot give it a name and know conceptually that there is this thing called inner dialogue and it's uncontrollable, how can you ever move in the direction of trying to manage it? Planning is intent on solving problems that present themselves. This is all Swami's words, by the way. That present themselves before the mind. Like you are at the signal, you are at the light, and you got to get to this place, and you're hitting red light after red light. Your mind starts thinking, hey, I should look at Google Maps and try to find an alternative path. That is the planning activity. And that's why Swami talks very little about the planning. Because to further our human existence, we do need to plan to an extent. But then Swami says, dialogue multiplies the problems, confounds the solutions. Only Swami can say this. A solution is meant to solve the problem. But Swami says, the way your minds work, and this is very, very insightful, because it tells us, what does it tell us? That the mind, which is the source of this inner chatter, is not trustworthy. It is not trustworthy. And all our lives we've been taught to depend on it. Think. You're not thinking enough, we've been told from the time you were in school. So when whatever your problem, you're in Charlotte Airport running between terminals, think. What are you going to do by thinking? Thinking is not going to make you fly. Thinking is not going to make the plane get late. If it is still waiting for you, so be it. You cannot do anything about it. And it's very important for us to know that very often the mind has charged itself with the responsibility to solve world problems, world hunger. And who asked it to do that? Half the things you have to accept, and you must accept. And the sooner you learn to accept them with humor, the better. But the mind is constantly leading you down the path of non-acceptance. And he says, it confounds the problems, causing confusion and adoption of wrong and ruinous means to solve them. The inner conversation and controversial chatter continues from morning until night. Thank you, Swami. As the divine soul, as the divine Lord, you have no mental and inner chatter, I'm sure. So for you to give this insight about the ordinary human being is fantastic. Swami is literally coming down to our level and telling us about our weakness, our way of thinking. It causes ill health and the early setting in of old age. The topics on which the chatter is based are mostly the faults and failings of others and their fortunes and misfortunes. So actually what I did, I didn't want to bring that to this session. I created a table just based on what Swami has said over these 4 or 5 slides, outlining the characteristics of the mind and where they examples of those characteristics. For instance, the mind is always outward looking. The moment you sit in your puja room or here and say, I really want to go within, 4 thoughts. Another click, 8 more thoughts. I have to call my husband. Did my children make it here? Is this a comfortable chair? Should I not move to the next chair? Those thoughts will start coming. So what I did is I put that table, and I'm happy to share that with you if you write to me, that shows that the mind has some very clear and clean ways of operation. One is it's always external looking. It's very tough to turn it within. The other important characteristic of the mind is, and you can start observing this in yourself, it's impossible to find the mind dwelling on the present. The moment you use the mind, it has to be either past or future. It will never bring you to the present. It will always dig the past or explore the future. Both of which you cannot do anything about. And I know it's easier said than done, but I'll tell you how this study helped me. Then Swami says, the perpetual dialogue is at the bottom of all the miseries of man. It grows wild very quick and suppresses the genuine worth of manhood. The genuine, what we could all achieve if we didn't listen to our minds. The inner worth, the soul would be directing us in a lot of our actions. And then he says, the talk that inhabits the mind during the waking stage persists even in dreams. And that is so true. Whatever you sleep thinking of, unsolved problems, you're still trying to solve them in your dreams. And the sum total of this exercise is to speak the truth nil. And let's say all this inner chatter were to be of some help, some benefit, then Swami would have said, do it. But actually you do not gain anything by all the mental analysis and mental chatter that your mind is engaging in. The Upanishads announce certain remedial sadhanas to get rid of these obstacles to inner peace. And if you want those secrets, contact Ravi Mariwalla. Just kidding. I had to take you guys out of that serious. Okay, we'll go forward. So, I just want to tell you one nice, fun incident that happened. Otherwise, you may think that I didn't have enough experiences. So, these were the days in which the sands were still there in Parthi. We are so blessed to have experienced that. And, we used to, during our vacations, we would sleep in the mandir. And we would all vie with each other to go to the place under Swami's window. And at night around 8:15 or so, he would put the light off and you could see it. And such a wonderful thing. Again, there's nothing sensational about it. You cannot convert it into a single dollar, but it's the most precious thing for all of us. Even the memory of it is so heartwarming. So that beautiful mandir, one day we were working till about 2 a.m. in the hospital, and we took somebody's bike and rode back from the hospital, and there was some gravel, and we skidded. We were 3 guys on a bike at 2 a.m. Puttaparthi. And the bike skidded, and we got quite a bit of injury, but we were fine. And so at that time, I was in some bandages, and I was allowed to sit right in the front and see how God works. We're so beholden to Him because through these, even an accident can become a redeeming, can give you a redeeming act of grace from Swami. So I was sitting right in the front in those days, and Swami there was this circle. Swami took the darshan round and came back. And he came and he stood in front of us and with both hands in front of him, and he was just swaying like this. And all of a sudden, one of the women from the ladies' side, I don't know what she was thinking, but she charged towards Swami. And we are familiar with many such incidents have happened. And in those days, Swami never had any people walking with him. And she just charged. And in that flash of a moment, I remember thinking that, hey, I am sitting here in front only because I have a knee injury, and Swami knows that I'm injured, and is it even proper to think of jumping up to prevent this thing from happening? And then when that bad thought came to my mind, I said, what nonsense. Who cares about the consequences? And it was just my great good fortune that everybody else was so stunned. And I just responded to the situation, and I got up and I charged towards Swami and went in front of him. And as this woman charged Swami, just probably a couple of feet before she reached Swami, I was able to grab hold of her, and I had to give her a hug because she was coming with such force that even if I had stopped her, we would have both hit Swami. So I had no other option but to think on my feet and just grab her and hold her there. She was probably a very good devotee, nothing wrong in her mind. And then, of course, everybody rushed there and took her, and Swami called the Sevadal and said, don't do anything to her, she's a good devotee. And then I hadn't realized, because those were the days of the sand, and the impact of her charging, she was running so fast. And when I held her, my small toes of both feet were bleeding. And Swami noticed that. I went back to my place, and Swami noticed that and said, come inside. And he took me inside the interview room alone, and he waved his hands and materialized a big piece of sugar candy for me. And he said, sweet thoughts, sweet heart. These are the only words he said. And then he said, look at that. There was just a little bit of blood coming from my toes. And he gave me his kerchief and he says, wipe it. And I wiped that. Little bit of the blood fell in the interview room floor also. And such a beautiful memory, because the Lord, he was so calm, even before the incident as well as after the incident. So my heart rate went up significantly, but he was so calm. And in that moment, he thought of materializing a piece of big, huge sugar candy for me. And I took it with me, and all the boys were saying, oh, this is why you did it. I said, come on, let me enjoy it. So we had our share of fun on that. But I just wanted to share with you, because just as you have to be alert with your mind, it is that same alertness that you bring to bear to help people around you, as I was able to do at that time. It was just prompted by Swami, and it is just another memory, sweet memory of the opportunities we had around him. So I'll close with that, and you still have to put up with me one more time. So I'm not yet done, but we'll meet tomorrow. Sai Ram.